Hey guys, you can now support this show and make your life 50% better by going to patreon.com/The System Is Down and signing up for the Downers Club, where you're going to get access to a plethora of wild, crazy, and often offensive bonus audio and video episodes of the show on a weekly basis. For more information, just go to patreon.com/The System Is Down. Today's episode is sponsored by the 29 Toes podcast. If at any point during this episode you find yourself a little too uncomfortable and triggered, you can head over to 29toes.com and kind of decompress your brain a little bit, where they're just having casual, laid-back, fun, funny conversations about things that are going on in their lives, in the world, things in media and entertainment, all that fun stuff. So check them out at 29toes.com or wherever podcasts are sold. The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System Is Down.
Well, welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the least comfortable shut up, Cole. Of the least comfortable show on the web. The System Is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics like conspiracies, politics, religion, and how much you hate your in-laws. I am here joined again by Craig, Nathan, and Cole, the original, the OG band of misfits that were in the start of the show, and that was kind of the intention of the show. But what we're doing here, if you missed last week's episode, definitely go back and listen to that as the first half of this conversation that we're going to be doing.
Man, last week was so long ago, guys. Doesn't it feel like it when we were talking?
I don't even remember. What did we talk about last week?
Man, I think it was movies.
You guys suck. But but yeah, we're just going over the things that we liked about the year. Last week we covered movies and TV shows. This time we're covering all of the things that went into our ears specifically, like podcasts, albums, and Cole, anything else that goes in your ears on a regular basis?
In mine, Q-tips.
Oh,
sure.
Right. You're not supposed to do that. It could damage your
but I have to,
your ear retinas, or I don't know. I don't know how.
Try them out.
I use random things. If I don't have a Q-tip, I find like flathead screws. Not usually toothpicks.
Flathead screwdrivers. You can just get a nice little dig in there.
For real though, have you guys heard of that candle trick that's supposed to like pull?
Yeah, we've done it.
That's fucking weird.
It's
been around for a while.
Yeah,
that's fucking weird.
Because I remember, is that that nature shop still open in Alito?
Anything
yes.
with podcast.
I just wanted to
that was the first place I saw those earwax candles.
Let's all talk at the same time.
I like turtles.
Yeah.
So, we are a couple hours and a couple drinks and maybe a couple smokes in, depending on who you're talking to. So, yeah, if you want to, if you don't want to jump in the middle of an already drinky conversation, then definitely go back and listen to last week's episode.
Super cohesive.
We're gonna pick up where we left off. Yeah, especially if you keep interrupting me while I'm talking and interrupting the show. We haven't even started yet. I haven't even hit record yet. Just kidding. But yeah, we're just gonna let you guys know what we enjoyed this year in audible fashion. And Nathan is complaining that we're already here too long. So we're going to make this a little bit snappy-pappy. If you need to leave at any point, Nathan, you are welcome to, but I know that this is what you enjoy talking about more than what we talked about last week. So that's why I started with that. And where do we want to start? Do we want to start with podcasts or musical albums? Vote.
Podcast.
Music.
Okay, music.
So Craig says podcast, Nathan says music, and Cole abstains courteously.
Well, thank you. No objection.
We can do music because people will probably stop listening at some point, and I think music will be more interesting than the podcast section. So
Here's
why we
the
should
the
thing.
interesting stuff.
Well, they are podcast listeners because they're listening to a podcast, so they might be looking for new podcasts to listen
Sorry,
to.
Nathan,
Maybe.
we completely lost what you said just now.
Yeah,
I was just saying what Dan said is the people who are going to sit through an hour of rambling
if they made it this
So,
far, they're
yes,
definitely
they're gonna
dedicated listeners. Especially since these are coming out. This one's coming out on the week of New Year's. So that's kind of why we do this. It's kind of so we have a nice celebration to wrap up the year, do some fun nonsense. But it's also because, the numbers and listenership drop substantially on Christmas and New Year's. So I don't want to bring in a guest and have a big interview come out and everybody else is out opening Hanukkah gifts. I don't know how Jews work.
How does that work, Nathan?
So, so who wants to go first? We're going to start off with musical albums of the year, and once again, same format as last week. You are welcome to give honorable mentions or hates that you have discovered, or just we're going to be loosey goosey, but give us your top three, starting with your third most favorite. Nathan, would you like to begin?
Sure. I will say I didn't listen to a whole lot of new music this year. Last year I listened to a lot more new music. This year it was just, I don't know, just going through different things that already existed. So it's a short list that I'm working with, but...
Well, you only need three, so that's fine.
Yeah, there were a few that kind of stood out to me. I'll start with number 3, is by... this is going to make me sound like a huge hipster, but...
Is it like the Decemberists or something?
No, this is, so just to preface so that I don't sound like as much of a hipster douchebag, this is a band that I was not aware of up until listening to this album. So it's not like, oh, I've been following them for years and like, you just wouldn't understand.
You really don't have to apologize for what you like to listen to. It's fine.
Yeah. So this is a band that I just came upon, but it's called Beach House. It's these two people. It's kind of like electro synth music. It's very ambient. It's on the fringes of what most people would like to listen to as music, but
Your
was
description's making you sound more like a hipster than anything.
I don't know, like it's not necessarily what I would choose to listen to if, say, you put it on just a list of music and said like this is the genre. So that's kind of why I don't know, mentioning that, I guess, is it's not necessarily something that I would gravitate towards naturally, but I had seen it. I had seen, or I'd heard maybe from somewhere somebody mentioned it or something, and I had it on a list I wanted to listen to, and I had an abundance of time one day. I went on a walk and I listened to it, and I dug it. But
and you didn't bother to watch a single TV show in that abundance of time that you had. I
can't sit down and sit in front of a TV. I don't know.
You can sit down in front of a radio and watch it play music, right?
Beauty of it. I can walk around with something in my pocket. I don't have to sit down.
Sure. What's your number 2? What do you got?
Number 2, I would say, I'm going to go with Charlie Puth, Voice Notes.
Voice Nuts?
Voice Notes.
Oh.
I swear you said Voice Nuts.
I did too. I wasn't making a joke.
Okay. No, it's actually pretty brilliant. If you're a creator, which Dan, I know you are, especially music, or anything along those lines, you probably have a bunch of voice notes on your phone of just stuff you're trying to keep track of. So anyway, that's a lot of where that
I know Cole does too.
Comes from. Yeah.
Because you've showed me many of them.
Fucking no.
If you
Get out of my head.
Get out of my phone.
If you don't know who Charlie Puth is, you need to become acquainted with him.
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, he's a younger guy, probably close in age to us, maybe around there, give or take a few years. And he is a fantastic musician, but he was a songwriter for a long time. He basically came into the pop music world saying, why can't we use these complex chords, and why can't we make it a little bit more in depth? We can still have the pop music sensibilities, but we can make it a little bit more substance. Mm-hmm. So he uses a lot of different chords that you might be used to hearing in like, soul music and stuff like that. And he's just a brilliant, prolific songwriter, and I enjoy it.
Very cool.
Dan, I like pop music.
I do.
But this is definitely something that takes pop music to the next level and
Did you say that I like pop music, or you do?
Yeah, you and me.
I don't like it secretly. You'll find that out here in just a moment. It's not a secret.
No, not necessarily. But speaking of pop music, there are a couple albums that I wanted to listen to this year, and I just did not get around to it. Ariana Grande's Sweetener is on that list. Also, I listened to Eminem's Kamikaze. It did not make my list.
It did not what?
It did not make my list. But
you son of a bitch. We might agree on movies, but we're going to disagree on music here.
This is not necessarily, like, I didn't put a whole lot of, thought into this, ranking them and whatever, but number 1 comes to AWOL Nation, Here Come the Runs.
Yes.
just because I hadn't heard anything from AWOL Nation for a long time, and or anything that Aaron Bruno touches turns into gold somehow.
It's true.
So
I haven't
really,
heard the album, but Ben showed me a couple of the songs, and he always lives up to any hype that he has, and he doesn't get enough hype. Like, his stuff is so unique and amazing.
yeah. So I liked that album quite a bit.
I didn't realize they came out with a new album because that does sound
It's
like
another
something
way
I need to go listen
kind
to.
of flew under the radar as well. But
What was the name of the album again?
Here Come the Runts.
The Runts?
Yes, RUNTS.
Okay.
I thought you said the runs.
The Runts.
That's what I heard the first time, too. So, voice nuts and here come the runs.
I'm into a lot of graphic music this year.
All right. So, Cole, would you like to go?
And my last, what's going on?
You can go last if you want. We can hold off if you're still doing your...
I just came
your
up with
research.
a third for the year for music, so
Okay.
I can't really say much on it, but so 3 bands. I don't really follow a lot of bands these days anymore, but some of them from the old days that still stuck around. Should I start with 3 or 1?
Start with 3.
Okay, so number 3, I'm gonna say Fall Out Boy's new record. I don't honestly know. I couldn't tell you the
didn't care
names of their
for-
songs
Oh.
because I don't. It's always on Pandora.
Yeah.
Or something for me. If I'm listening to music, it's because I'm doing a project at home.
Yeah.
And I've got something on shuffle or whatever. I know I've hit thumbs up to some of the new stuff from Fall Out Boy. I like what they do.
Yeah.
They always seem to change it a little bit between stuff anymore.
I think their new album's fantastic.
And I
wasn't a
think they just
fan.
can't do any wrong in my eyes.
Yep.
But they're still number 3. So
Sure. Yeah, it was very different for their stuff, and they keep getting popular every album. And I've said it
And that's my problem.
every time. I'm like, yeah, the new Fall Out Boy album is really
it's
poppy,
just a changing thing.
but it's
like,
they're an amazing pop band too,
yeah,
and that's
they just
fine.
grow, and this is what they are.
They
I mean, his
they
voice,
do it well.
his voice is
I
amazing
just
no matter what.
I love their old stuff so much.
Me
And same
too.
with Panic
Same.
at the Disco. I love their
Agreed.
old stuff so much that listening to that, I'm like, this is good music, but to me, it's not Fall Out Boy. To me, the last Panic at the Disco album that came out was super poppy, and I loved it. But this one came out, and I'm just like, meh, it's not. I'm not really feeling this
Quit
one.
giving my whole
So
list
neither-
away, people.
So
Sorry.
in this
Especially
room,
if you don't like it.
in this room, I'd probably say I'm the one who came to liking Fall Out Boy the latest. Like
Sure.
literally, I never.
I doubt
like,
it.
you guys have those early memories of when their stuff came
Crick
out,
came into him pretty late too.
right?
I came
Oh, you
into their
did?
old stuff like a year or two ago. I started
Okay,
listening to
yeah.
them and Panic, but it was
Okay,
their
that's
old
cool.
stuff.
I'm with you then because I thought that most of you guys were like longtime Fall Out Boy fans, but
I'm OG. My vape just broke. Please continue.
just
Yeah.
fell apart.
I'm a long-time
I
Fall
figured
Out
that you guys were
also.
at least longtime Fall Out Boy. Like even if you're not a fan, you knew of it or you listened to it
Yeah.
enough to know.
I mean, everybody
Um,
knew Dance Dance and Sugar were going down.
right,
It's
I
whether or
knew
not you
of
knew like
them.
Folly Ado and Infinity on High.
Right, I knew of them and I
Right.
knew that stuff, but I was like, I adamantly just wouldn't pick it up because I was like, that's too like girly pop.
Yeah, I was opposed to it for a couple years when it first
Yeah.
came out.
I don't know
just
why it
because
was.
it's
That
like
was just stupid.
because we were in high school and everything mattered for some reason.
You're too emo for it.
But when I honestly first-
too,
eyeliner.
too emo for Pete Wentz, who was wearing
Right.
eyeliner.
So
Exactly.
So for it being my number 3, I just mean to say I got into Fall Out Boy at Save Rock and Roll. That is when I was really like, oh my god, this band is
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, can you not?
And
compa-
then-
can
and
you
then
not
I
pair
looked
up
back at their
anybody
old stuff
better
and I
than
love
Elton
it,
John with
so.
him?
No, it's amazing, man.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Like I loved Save Rock and Roll, and then I'm like, wait, what have I been missing? And so
I came in on Infinity on High, and that's exactly what happened to me. I was like, this is great. And I was only like
Yeah.
2 albums behind. There was just the
I think
very first
it-
one that nobody knows, and then From Under the Cork Tree, and I went back and dug into all those, and I have not stopped listening to them since.
right.
Yeah,
So-
so am I the one that came in on From Under the Cork Tree?
Congratulations, Nathan.
Yeah, so you are a longtime fan,
I-
which is
That is
why I could
think-
imagine someone like you not liking their new stuff as much
But the
because
thing is,
you started
I
early.
like it. It would probably make my honorable mentions list because I liked it, but it for me like the things that they have to have like that I need to go back to it kind of
Right.
power. And one that I totally forgot about that came out very recently this year is Emery Eve. That
yeah, I
my-
was going to bring that up
I haven't
too. I was
heard that
wondering
record
if
yet.
I know you two are both fans. Actually, we're all fans. I haven't listened to it yet. I've had it on my
I just
iTunes,
wanted
but I still haven't listened to it.
I'm with you too. Like I haven't had a good time to just want to sit down with it. So
I'm just upset there's a naked chick on the album. That's just not Christian enough.
That's the main reason I listened to it. I wasn't going to listen to it because
Craig, your favorite TV show was porn. Why wouldn't you like every album?
but that's different, man.
I guess people have to go back and listen to the episode now, so they can take some context out of that.
No, just trust what I'm saying is 100% accurate.
So
Craig was like, I didn't have a top favorite one. I know this is going to break some of the rules. I know that it's been out for a while, but porn.
And in general, it's my favorite TV show.
I love the discussion, but I've still only gotten through one of mine, and I thought I would have nothing to talk about. So that's interesting.
all right, let's
Carry on.
So the new Fall Out Boy, definitely, I'm a fan. Number 2 would be Beartooth's new record, Disease.
It's in my honorable mentions.
He did it again. I don't know how he keeps doing it. Caleb Shomo.
There were some things on that. I liked the album. I haven't given it a huge listen. I've listened to it like 2 or 3 times, but I felt like some of it was a little too. I always like the way he mixes pop and metal, but some of it felt a little bit cheesy in certain areas. And some of the lyrics did. But I mean, it was still a solid record for sure.
I was struggling to remember what albums I paid attention to that came out this year. So
Sure.
but I mean, Fall Out Boy, yeah, good. I really love Beartooth.
Yep.
When their new songs came on my playlist rotation, I was like, it's a lot like their last record, but I love the last record.
Exactly.
And it's different a little bit, but not really. I mean, I really like it still.
Yeah.
But by far, like, super way past that would be number 1, Erase Me, Under Oath.
Okay.
That record is...
Was that this year? That feels like it was last year.
Early this year.
Okay.
It was
I still
early
haven't
this year.
given
That's
that.
on my list too.
I still honestly haven't given that the listen that it deserves.
Dude, I
wasn't blown away.
It's a super out there yet natural progression for them. Like, it just sounds right for what they're utilizing Spencer's voice fully now.
Sure.
They're using Aaron's and his in just a different way than they ever have.
Yeah.
The songs, some of the feeling is just different. It's just a different melancholy emotion than you've ever felt from Under Oath before. Songs like I Hate It and...
I thought you said you liked it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
The song I Hate It and I Gave Up. Like, it's just like, if you followed the band closely enough to know...
I listened to the new Under Oath album. I hate it. I gave up. It's all great.
Those are amazing. Those are 2 of the tracks. They weren't... I Hate It was one of the 3rd singles released, I think, but... It's just very, if you follow the band members at all, and if I'm crazy into them, so
yeah.
I know they're in their relationship of the band that they had falling outs and shit, and just the way that Aaron left and how there was some interesting just baggage within the band of when Aaron left. That's when I was super upset about.
I remember
when Aaron left, and I was like, I don't even care about this new record, but going back, I do like Disambiguation.
Yeah, it was a good one.
It's a decent record. I think I like Spencer on His Own and Sleepwave, but
yeah,
he
I always want to say Sleep Well.
Sleepwave. It never really struck me as awesome. I liked Sleepwave; it was cool. I couldn't name one of their songs.
Sure, same.
But I thought the new Under Oath just made the 2 things come together in the way that they never have, and it's my favorite record of the year for sure.
Cool. I dig it. Any honorable mentions, or is that pretty much all you've listened to this year?
As of new releases, I mean, I'm sure there were new releases I've heard. I just didn't really know when that record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just passes through
Yep.
my radar. So
Absolutely.
those 3 are my only points to make.
I like it, and I would agree on all of them. Not necessarily in that order, and like I said, I haven't listened to Under Oath that thoroughly, but
I can't believe you haven't.
all great stuff. Craig, do you want to go, or do you want me to go?
I'll go.
All right.
I'll pick up where Cole left off because number 3 on my list is Erase Me by Under Oath. All my albums are a bit of a throwback, a little bit of nostalgia. Hello, child.
For audio listeners, we now have a baby on the podcast, so if somebody goes, it's not just Craig's whiny voice.
No, it's me.
It's Craig blowing his nose.
Or agreeing, nah.
Nah, bro.
So, like I started to say before, I was rudely interrupted by a child. All
Sorry,
of mine are a bit of a throwback, a little bit of nostalgia. but they are all new releases, which is nice. I'm not going to bring in like The Office or something like that, like I did last time. Erase Me made number 3. And honestly, I wasn't sure what I was going to think of it because my first experience with it was I was listening to the radio and this band came on. I was like, wow, this band is really good. And then I heard it was Under Oath and I was like, that's not great for Under Oath. I just not a huge fan of radio sounding Under Oath. It was just it just wasn't there in my opinion for Under Oath. So I'm like, I hope the album's not like that. Went and listened to the album and I listened to all the songs a couple different times and no, it stays true to Under Oath. Like Cole was saying, it's not your old school Under Oath, but you can definitely feel the movement from their early albums throughout all their albums up to this point. It stays true to Under Oath. Yeah. Spencer still has the most beautiful scream in the history of screams. It's like if angels could scream, Spencer's scream is there. And
I would imagine they probably can, but I don't know.
I think that they don't sing in heaven. They just all scream Spencer's voice. But
you're really monotonous.
And like, no, he has the least monotonous scream.
Well, if they're all doing it though,
that's true.
One time after a show, somebody told me I sounded like Spencer, and I was so excited about that.
He went home and jerked
one
off.
Random person.
He went home and jerked off to that
you're
thought.
Successful.
It was amazing.
You're successful as a screamer when people try to compare other hardcore bands to. Oh, he has like a Spencer style scream. Yep. Like I've heard people say that about several other bands that I've heard. And you'd like him. He has kind of a Spencer style. Like people model their scream style off of Spencer because he was like the original mainstream screamer.
This is the result of earlier bands that were
for sure
stepping out and doing that stuff. But
I was once told that I sound like Nick Jonas. By a moron.
I don't know the Jonas Brothers well enough to ever know what he sounds like.
I don't either.
Anyway, let's do number 2.
That album was good. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way when they dropped a couple fuck bombs on it, but
why?
Not at all. No, this album is actually super real, and you could feel more raw emotion in it than in any other album. I
want to say that I have no problem with the profanity. I do have a little bit of a problem with them throwing it in the first single, just because it's like, why? I mean, just because I feel like it's intentionally just there, so it's like that's the first song you're going to put out to be like, this is us now. So take it.
Intentionally chose not to do that too. It's like
it's not like littered. The album isn't like littered with F-bombs, so it would be really easy for them to not. Like any other song, I think there's like
that
2
song,
or 3
more than any. It's the song "On My Teeth." I think represented like their feelings about what they feel they want to be in fans' eyes now, and who they are. No, it really is. Yeah. It's like this is what we care about now. And if that's let's clear the room really quick.
I agree. I'm not that opposed to it. It's just kind of like, but I mean, all in all, I really could not give a fuck.
And the fact that they have, if you don't know, which we probably all know, they have stepped away from the Christian label.
Do they still have underoath777.com?
Yes, that's their domain.
Yes. They stepped away from being called a Christian band, and I think that's made them more like deeper in like their lyrics and stuff.
And
you can hear
true
more
to themselves.
Yeah, it is more honest
because they age well. Is they're not being honest with anything that they've grown to change in the way they think.
Right. And
like this band is.
It's well known that some of the people in Under Oath are not Christians. So for them to as a dying it and pretend until somebody tries to murder their wife.
That's a different story, a little bit. I mean, I don't know that all these people, all the people in As Lay Dying's personal faiths or anything, but. They don't. I don't think they're claiming Christianity anymore. They're just trying to pretend like nothing happened.
Sure.
Anyway, welcome to the Under.
Right, exactly. Welcome to the Rotten Potatoes episode of Under Oath. Craig, what is your number 2?
Number 2 is another throwback. It is Circles by POD, and this album just
you guys are taking all. I need to go first next time because you guys take all my stuff. And of course, in the podcast, we'll probably have completely different ones. So even if I go first, there won't be any crossover.
My God.
See, POD was me and Daniel's favorite band back in the day, and their rapcore was fantastic. And then the album Alive
My
came
email
out, or
address
Satellite.
was podfan@mchsi.com or something like that.
Something like that.
I feel
the
just
album
as
with
bad about
Satellite-
it as you do.
The album with Satellite came out, and it started getting more like melodic and stuff, and it was still a good album. And then they kind of stepped away from their what
Rap core.
we know them as, stepped away from the rap altogether and became more like melodic and
And the dude can't
the
sing
fancy
very
guitaring
well at
and
all.
stuff. He's not a very good singer, and it got pretty light, like really contemporary sounding. And this new album went back, and the title Circles just tells me they circled back to their roots and stuff. And there's a ton of rapcore. The first half of it is almost predominantly rapcore, and the second half is more of the melodic stuff, like their newer stuff.
Well,
but
not necessarily. Like even their old stuff, like Satellite and Fundamental Elements, like they went back and forth between the rap core, and then they would have like some Rastafarian vibes and stuff like that, and they would jump around a little bit in styles. And I'm totally fine with that, but their core was still the rappy metal stuff, and that's what this album did. It kind of went back to what I've been screaming for years, like, stop trying to sing, man. You can sing okay, you can hit the notes, but it's not doing anything for you. And your rap stuff
don't
is still
just sing.
Yeah, your rap stuff is not like amazing, but at least you'll give us the nostalgia because
Right,
the new
and
stuff
that's-
wasn't working.
Well, it's the nostalgia of the 90s with like amazing production of the 2000s.
Yeah.
The music production in it is just fantastic. Like even way ahead of what they were back when we liked them. Like the music and the mixing and all that stuff is just really amazing. I could just listen to the music part of it and not listen to him sing or rap
Absolutely.
and still enjoy it. So yeah, that one definitely made me feel like I was back in high school again by listening to that. And I could.
It's nothing by today's standards that's going to blow minds, but if you were a fan back then, you'll be a fan of this. And if you didn't like, Fundamental Elements or Satellite, it's not going to blow your mind or be anything reinventing the wheel, but it made me happy, and I was pleasantly surprised. I texted you, and I was like, dude, I can't believe I'm saying this, but you need to actually listen to the new POD album. And I sent you like one of the new songs. You're like, is this even new?
Right. I assumed it might have been like something from before he grew out his dreadlocks or
I mean, before
whatever.
he cut off his dreadlocks?
No, I'm just saying like if it was like predated his dreadlocks, because it reminded me of their old school stuff, but the guy didn't have dreadlocks, so it could have been the later 90s, early 2000s stuff. But my final one, which I highly doubt any of you have listened to at all.
All right,
is-
Nathan.
I'm just saying. Because I'm stuck in a world where I really don't like current music because all the guitar tones and stuff like that sound overly digitalized. They don't even sound like guitars anymore. It just sounds like somebody made them on a computer, which is more than likely what they're doing. But this album here is called Shiny and Oh So Bright by the Smashing Pumpkins. And it is like, it sounds like for the most part they just mic'd an old school tube amp and just recorded straight out of that. And it I don't know if any of you have ever been into Smashing Pumpkins, but it's not as grungy as their old school stuff, but they do stay true to their rock and their heavy guitar driven faster songs. And then the slower songs, which makes up about half the album, are really piano driven, which I'm a big fan of the piano. So it's very musically amazing, and it's just kind of a relief on the ears in 2018 because there's just so much shit of music out there that this album is just like, oh, it kind of feels like back when before computerized recordings, and it just is throwback to like analog recording and stuff like that. And I've always loved Smashing Pumpkins. What's that?
I feel like Under Us Records sounds like that too a little bit in certain ways, but that's what makes them great. Like the record by Smashing Pumpkins that sets it apart in your head, and I mean that's
right.
How many of the original are on this record?
What's that?
Do you know how many of the original members are on this record?
I think on the record, most, if not all, the old original members are back. I'd have to look back into it. It doesn't have the female bassist Darcy or whatever her name is. They had a falling out this year, and I was kind of worried about the Smashing Pumpkins because when Chris Cornell killed himself, and Scott Weiland died, or Weiland, I can't think of his name, from Stone Temple Pilots. I was like, man, all these early '90s mega stars are offing themselves or overdosing and stuff. And I'm like, this was late last year, if Smashing Pumpkins decide to go back on tour, because it always seems like it happens after they decide, hey, we're going to go on tour again, and then they go off the rails and kill themselves.
Michael Jackson.
Exactly. I was like, if Smashing Pumpkins ever goes back on tour, we're losing Billy Corgan for sure, because the guy's already depressive. I mean, shit, he shacked up with Courtney Love in the or the mid 2000s.
It's a miracle he's made it this far.
Right, and then late last year, almost probably a few months later, they announced that they were going back on tour, and I was like, fuck. But then about a month or so ago, they announced they were releasing this album, and it killed it in my eyes, or my ears, I guess. And it seems like he's not going to derail anytime soon. Maybe Darcy might derail and kill herself because she wasn't allowed to tour with them because she's neurotic or whatever.
Wasn't Billy Corgan on your death watch list for 2018
yeah,
too?
I think that was, I was wondering if we had this conversation last year, because that was about the time that I came to the conclusion.
Yeah.
That was right about the time they announced that they were going to start touring again. So I was like, yep, Billy Corgan's gone for sure.
Hey, we've still got another month left, so there's time as of this recording. If you're listening to this at the end of the year when it comes out and Billy Corgan is dead, rest in peace, Billy Corgan. It was nice knowing you.
Dark.
I hope we didn't somehow change fate with this and kill off Billy Corgan, because I would be super sad. He just has the most unique voice, I think, in rock.
I never really
a lot of people
got into him all that much. Just because I haven't really listened to him.
A lot of people don't like his voice just because it's different. It's not your typical clear voice, but that's a big part of why I like Smashing Pumpkins is his voice, and then the raw grungy guitars too, because you don't hear a lot of guitar driven music anymore either. Even a lot of the rock bands that come around, it's still overly synthesized and stuff like that.
So you got any honorable mentions?
No, I, like Cole, haven't really consumed a lot of new music this year. Most of the stuff is within the last month. Actually, POD and Smashing Pumpkins are both within the last couple of weeks, and then Under Oath I kind of hit up about a month or so ago, so it's pretty recent.
Well, I've listened to quite a bit, and I will go through them quickly because I'm guessing that none of you care about any of them. But speaking of shitty pop music, here's my list. POD's Circles, already mentioned. Let's talk about that again, but not really. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I think that there's still some cheesy stuff, but the cheesy stuff is their classical POD cheesy stuff, and that's fine. Cool. I can overlook it because of the nostalgia's sake. Now, number 2 for me is Fall Out Boy's Mania, which Cole mentioned. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I'm just going to say that about every band, because all of my things have already been spoken about, except for my number 1, which is, well, it's been spoken about, but not in a positive way. Eminem Kamikaze came out this year, and I've raved about it. It's my number 1 album of the year. I think the album is amazing. I think...
that good.
What?
It's that good that it made number 1?
Absolutely, yep. What'd you say, Nathan?
I said it was good. Just Eminem's never going to make my list. Just
not hipster enough.
It's just for the reason that he's like... It's the reason that a lot of rap never makes my list. It's like, I'm cool. In case you didn't know it, I'm going to explain.
It's cocky douchebaggery, and it's basically a friend of mine who's in the music industry in a big way. We were talking back and forth about the album. He was like, "Yeah, I think it's good, but I think I mean, it's not amazing. And I was just raving about it. I was like, no, I think it's amazing. I disagree with you on this one. And he was like, yeah, but it's like musical masturbation, basically. And I was like, I know it is, and I love it. It's like a guitar player
He loves
listening.
masturbation.
It's like a guitar player listening to a guy shred. They're gonna like eat it up. That's how I felt. Like I do vocals and I do rap and stuff. Like the things that he did on this album, the way that he turned phrases and his cadences and his abilities, it was ridiculous. And I think that if you don't enjoy it, then I understand because it's not for everybody, but it's something that I think people will be studying for years to come in his ability to put things together.
He's very masterful at his craft. I just wish he would talk about something that I cared about.
Sure.
Right.
That's the only complaint I
can
have.
He
see
should
that.
put his talent to better use.
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciated listening to it for the fact that I felt like he was very competent, very talented. He did a good job with it. It was just, I don't care at all about what you're talking about, so it's never going to.
Well, I do. I do care about what he's talking about because I listen to more rap, and he's like calling out everybody in the entire rap game and rap community, like just ripping people apart over and over. And there's like some stuff that wouldn't even be caught if you don't like dig into a lot of the stuff and see what he's even referencing. But once you do, it's like it's brutal.
But I imagine probably a lot more than I said. I did pick up on a lot of it, but I imagine that if you know more about it, there's probably like a ton more there that I missed just because I'm not that into it.
So Nathan, if it wasn't about the content, are you like a question that ran across my mind is, for me, I know it's impossible, but are you guys ever able to just like listen to a song on the radio or online that you searched or whatever it is and just hear it for its audible qualities and not what the words are? You know what I'm saying?
100%.
I primarily listen to music. Yeah, I primarily listen for the instrumentals, and that's why I have a hard time with like pop music or rap music because I prefer more like the guitars or the real drums. That's one reason I love 21 Pilots because they have real drums, like live drums
too. Is what I'm saying. I'm saying that like in a rap thing or something where I can listen to a lot of it, and I think Eminem's incredibly talented.
Yeah, where he can speak faster than I can drum.
I'm saying it doesn't matter what he's saying because the way his mouth is making noises is fucking cool. Like, have you ever got like I can't really do that on a regular basis. I have to really try. Yeah. When it comes to listening to a piece of music and not worrying about what it's talking about, because that's so hard for me. Like to not listen intently on what's being said. Yeah. I know there's tons. Like there was a metal band called, and it's stupid, but quick example, called Attila, and they made just dirty, vile, awful songs about that were things that were awful. Yeah, their music was incredibly cool, and if I weren't worried about what they were saying, I would have really thought it was awesome. For a minute. You know what I mean?
Myself and my wife have exactly opposite approaches to music. She's primarily listening to vocals. I'm primarily not. I'm listening to everything else, but yeah, I think what you're describing, like his voice as an instrument, is probably the only reason that I enjoyed it at all.
But
I mean, the beats and the production on the album were not amazing. Like the music was not fantastic. It's Eminem entirely that was fantastic about it.
Yeah, the clever turn of phrase, all that stuff, I appreciated. The internal construction of it, like, oh, he's referencing this thing, and then just a few words later, he's turning it to make it a second way, like a double entendre.
The album most highly in the sense of its cleverness and not necessarily its sonic.
Yeah.
It's cleverness and his master of the skill.
So it's not like sonically the best rap you've ever heard.
No, sonically, I would say it's some of the best rap I've ever heard. I would say that the beats and the actual music, like Dr. Dre produced the beats and made all the instrumentation for it. That's nothing amazing by any stretch. But if you take that out of it completely, it's an amazing album still, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just because of the medium, I do focus so much more on what he's actually saying in addition, because most of what I'm paying attention to is like how he's saying it or how he's internally connecting the pieces. But then it's the larger picture of like what kind of a story is he telling, which is the other component that I pay a lot of attention to.
You're right.
In any
medium of rap, it's
that's
way
the
more
part. That's the part that it just didn't really resonate with me on, and so it would be hard for me to rate it like on my number.
I disagree, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Reginald,
I disagree. So I have a whole bunch of honorable mentions, and I'll breeze through them quickly. Continuing with the pop rap crap, Kids See Ghosts, which is Kanye West and Kid Cudi's new album that came out this year. Thought it was amazing. Nathan, you listened to it. What'd you say?
Yes, I liked it a lot as well. It's one that I would definitely go back to.
Yeah, it is like one of the most unique and abstract instrumentally rap albums I've ever heard.
Is that
that one I don't care about what they're saying because the way it's pieced together, I have no idea how that album exists.
Yeah.
Like the
Does
sounds
that
that they
have
put together is crazy.
Does that have the song from SNL on it? That
No,
horrible,
shut up.
god awful song.
No, that's on his next album supposedly. That
Okay,
will never
that's
be released.
That's a horrible song.
It is a horrible song, and I love
That's
Kanye West.
I like appreciate like consuming art that's like this as well, but that's one where I did not feel the need to understand at all what was going on, just
No.
because what was being done was so avant-garde that it just pushed like that part of my thought so much that I didn't feel like I needed to understand what's going on. I just need to experience it.
Yeah, it's like Bon Iver. I pointed out, I think his album last year. It's like you listen to something like that, and it's like if you just listen to it half-assedly and aren't paying attention to really close things. It's like this is a fun pop album, whatever. It has some weird stuff. If you really break it down and listen to each individual piece, it's like what crossed your mind that gave you that idea? Like I would have never come up with these crazy abstract things. It's like they threw stuff at the wall and somehow made something beautiful out of it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, Panic at the Disco's Pray for the Wicked almost made my top 3. Both of those almost made my top 3.
Yeah, I should have had that on my list.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a good
I love their
album.
songs.
I do too.
And it's catchy. Like all the songs that I've heard, at least, are really catchy and will get stuck in your head. It's just like it's not really true to Panic, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, screw you. It is
That's why
because that's
Saturday Night on that one.
it was
Like,
yes.
Okay, then that definitely should have been on my top 3.
It
I
was
just
written
didn't
by
even
Panic,
realize.
so it's true to Panic, and screw you.
That album's
Yeah.
great.
Fair enough.
I would actually.
That
not
song is good.
Fall Out
It's a
Boy
very
out
catchy
for it.
song.
I think it's better than Fall Out Boy's new record.
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth between the two. The thing is, I listened to Panic's a lot most recently because Fall Out Boys came out at the beginning of the year. Panic's just came out, so I couldn't even remember if Fall Out Boys came out this year. So, but Fall Out Boys does top it for me as far as overall listenability. Continuing on, Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park. He has a new solo album called Post Traumatic. It's amazing.
I didn't even know he came out with anything.
Yep, it talks a lot about the shit that he's gone through with that. So it's really interesting story-wise, and he's an amazing musician and producer and everything. 21 Pilots album Trench was good.
I haven't listened to a single track off of that.
See,
Actually, I listened
that was
to one on their ad, and I hated it, so I didn't.
yeah, the same.
It's not true to 21 Pilots, but it's still good.
It's just not like it's nothing to me. I think I listened to it on Pandora, and I listened to like 3 songs hoping it would get better, and it just nothing stuck. So I never listened to
I've listened
any
to
of
the
the
album
songs
quite a
more than
few
once.
times. Like it didn't stick with me right at first. Probably the second or third time listening through it, it really started to sink in. And so, like he's an amazing storyteller, and the amount of thought that he puts into every single thing that happens is insane. Some of the songs, like it to me, and I've said this before, possibly even on the show, but like it didn't feel like 21 Pilots. It felt like more chill, more something that would go on tour with like the Gorillaz or something, but it was still really good. It just isn't the quirky eccentricness that I look for in a 21 Pilots album, but I still really like
They
it.
shot They were shooting themselves in the foot making that their thing because that's literally something that you can't replicate.
Sure.
Like,
Well,
you know what I mean? But that's why they were awesome. So
yeah.
I miss their indie like super emotional stuff that
Yeah.
what you're talking about. They're quirky, super different, and
The
it
pop
seems
and
like
raw.
and they've shifted away from that rawness, in my opinion. Like some of my favorite stuff of theirs is off their stuff before they got into that popular
Same.
era.
I liked them before they were popular.
Look
I did like
no,
them
I didn't
before they were popular.
I didn't know them before they were popular, but I listened when they got popular. I was like, this is okay. And then I went back and listened to their old stuff, and it was good.
It's better.
Really good. And then I listened to their original stuff that isn't even on like a major label or anything. It was probably independently released, and that stuff is fantastic.
We all know their original stuff. It seems like so.
Yeah. we know their original stuff, but I mean, they weren't signed. Vessel was their first big album.
Right.
Anyway, continuing on with this thing that we're not going to spend a bunch of time on, supposedly. Blue October, I hope you're happy. They're always amazing. Check them out if you don't know them. Just good, solid rock, and some of the best lyrics. Like, he speaks from my soul, personally.
Yeah.
Is that what your intro song is from, that album?
Yes, our anti-news intro song is Colors Collide by Blue October. Thank you, YouTube, for not striking us yet, but check that out, because they're always great, and I can listen, them throughout the years, I can listen to them and remember different things in my life, and he just speaks in such a way that speaks to me so personally and beautifully. Kanye West's new album, Ye, was pretty good. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I'm sure none of you listened to it. That's fine. Had some good stuff. It was similar to the Kids See Ghosts album, but not quite up to par. He's always great at production and making things weird, which I like. I discovered a new band at Audiofeed called Many Rooms, and it's just a female vocalist with acoustic guitar, just very sad girl shit, as a friend of mine described it. It's just really, I don't want to say emo, but it's really like stripped down, ambient, lyrical, beautiful wonderfulness. MXPX released a new album. It's self-titled.
I forgot about that.
It's the same album that they've released 100 times, but they cuss on this one. I've always said MXPX keeps releasing the same album, but I love that album, so I'm going to keep buying it.
True, it's true.
And I discovered a new band just a couple weeks ago called Azusa, who is on Solid State Records, who I've not heard anything good off of in a long time, but their album's called Heavy Yoke. It's very unique, kind of...
Sounds super overtly Christian.
It's not. It's like stoner metal, basically. It's like it's super it's super raw, punkish female screaming vocals and singing vocals. So like the vocals are super raw, and then their music is very like, I don't want to say mathcore. I'd say it's kind of like jazzy metal, and they're like. They have some Scandinavian influence, so it's like super unique especially for Solid State, and I really enjoyed it. Nathan, you listen to that too, right?
Yeah, Cole, do you know Dillinger Escape Plan or Between the Buried and Me or anything like that in that realm?
Yes.
Or the Chariot?
Yeah, the Chariot.
It's all of those quite well. Most, I would say, Between the Buried and Me, I'm a pretty big fan of them.
Yeah, so it's kind of in that realm. I don't know how you describe that, experimental metal, progressive metal, math, or whatever. It's the music is in that realm, and then like Dan said, it's female
that's
vocal.
Cool. I just said that their like name and album sounded super hard.
Azusa.
Yeah.
Well, not the
when
name.
Dan described it, I was like,
and where you said you discovered them, so I knew that's a Christian festival.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very Christian sounding.
What were you saying, Nathan?
Oh, I was just saying when you were describing it to me, I'm like, well, that's incredibly weird, but also probably something I would like. I had no idea they were on Solid State though.
Yeah. Yeah, they are, which
Solid State's really trying.
Gives me hope. I mean, I can't dog them too much because I haven't actually dug into anything that they've done. Just nothing has grabbed me since the good old days of, like Dead Poetic and shit like that. But worth a listen if you like some good, punkish, stoner metal-ish, progressive metal, whatever. I don't know.
Wow, that's so many genres in one.
It is, and it is. I showed it. Ben was over here the other day, Nathan, and I was showing him, and he was like, "This type of music makes me wish I smoked weed." I was like, "Exactly."
You can.
Do you want to mention John Cooper's new project?
Dude, that shit's good.
You think
I'm
so?
I thought so too.
The song.
I mean, it's good.
Yep.
That's
it's
this
good.
Year?
I sent it to Craig, and I was like, "Dude, check this out." Because did you hear it from BC Pod?
Yeah.
I listened to. Honestly, I'll say, and this will be a good transition into podcast.
To his whole EP. I loved it.
This will be a good transition to podcast because I was listening to the Bad Christian Podcast episode with John Cooper from Skillet,
And he was cool as hell.
I've been like, he seems a little selloutish, but he explained a lot of things, and I see him in a better light now.
Listen to the episode.
And he has a new project called, what is it? Fight the Fury?
Know.
Yep,
yeah.
Fight the Fury.
Something like that.
And it's like heavy. It's pretty.
Pretty
solid in my opinion.
My opinion is it sounds like Skillet meets Slipknot.
Oh,
if you combine the two bands,
oh my
that's
God,
exactly what it sounds
what I
like.
said.
Well,
That's exactly
and there's
I liked
a
it.
part
It
of me
just wasn't
that
great.
I mean, we've been talking about all these nostalgic bands. as much as I've fallen off the bandwagon from them like 4 albums ago, 5 albums ago, like
Slipknot?
there's no Skillet. Like there's still a nostalgic part of me that's like, if you're doing something that feels real to me, then I like it. If you're getting back to the raw grittiness, then I can dig that.
Right, the Fight the Fury stuff sounds really good. I think it's really cool, honestly.
I guess my main problem, like, it's good music, it's really heavy, and I like the direction because Skillet hasn't been super heavy in a while, and so I would like Skillet to almost sound like that. My only issue with it, and this is what made me really come to terms with the fact that guitars just don't sound like guitars anymore. They sound overly processed, and that's how I felt.
Incredibly overproduced.
And that was the issue I had with it. I'm just like, this should be like super heavy driven guitars, and you got this overly produced.
Sorry,
like,
we
super
can't all be
digital
smashing pumpkins. Nathan, I think you have something to say, and your Skype does not like actually give us audio until you're like halfway into your sentence, so that's why you keep getting talked over. But go ahead.
Oh, I'm pretty used to being talked over, so it doesn't bother me.
Oh, sound more like a sad sack hipster, please.
No, it's just my voice is very easy to ignore.
Sleep too.
You're nighttime radio DJ guy.
Yeah.
Now you'll listen to the sultry sounds of Nathan's voice.
No, I didn't necessarily have anything to say. I guess I was just very interested in what you guys were talking about. I didn't know anything about any of that last half of that conversation, but I will definitely be checking out a lot of this stuff that I heard you guys mention.
Fight the Fury because John Cooper's actually cool.
Yeah.
That's why.
I mean, we called him out way back on the Christian Art Sucks episodes, like, for conforming to stuff and selling Jesus and stuff, but he owns it. He says, this is a business. I'm doing it as a business to make money. I'm doing this other thing to be more passionate about, and also I'm still really passionate about the Jesus stuff, and I've never wavered on that. So I can tip my hat a little bit to him on that.
I respect
I'll have to go listen to that episode because I have kind of wondered if it's just all a show and just to keep making the Christian dollar.
I mean, it kind of is. I mean, he says it's a business. We have to do this to make money. We write 50 to 70 songs per album because there's a million hands that go into it to make sure that this is a thing that will make money, and that's fine. Yeah. I mean, I have no problem with that.
Not phoning in like the belief, like who he is though, which is cool.
He just kind of, from what you see, he kind of gives off a douchebag vibe. I mean, I've never talked to the guy.
Listen to this interview with him.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have to go give it a listen, I guess. So I had changed my opinion.
Before we move right on to podcast, I wanted to ask: did Slipknot release material this year? Was that this year?
They did. I don't know if it was this year, but it's been recent.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that new music video of theirs? It's just a typical format for a Slipknot music video. It's like blood and just a
blood,
bus full
the
of
devil,
people with masks and blood. I hated this song. I thought it was awful.
I don't know if I don't remember it. I don't remember it.
I tried to like it, dude. It just sounds like them trying to sound like Slipknot.
Working too hard to sound like yourself.
It sounds like they're trying to sound like them. And I think that was this year, but I don't know.
According to Wikipedia,
could have been last year.
Point 5, the Grey Chapter came out 4 years ago.
What? There was a music video that I could have.
I think they have a new song out. I don't think they have a new album out.
They have a new song out then.
Yeah.
That's what I need to find out.
Anyway, you need to move a little closer to your mic, Cole. But let's move on to podcasting. And again, this does not have to be podcasts that came out this year. It just has to be a podcast that releases new material in the year 2018. Because I'm not going to go try and find brand new podcasts every year, and that's insanity. Just like I don't find new TV shows every year. But so
I'll go first.
Maybe I'll just go first. You guys don't steal all my things.
Maybe
I'll go first. I want to go first because mine's going to be short.
That's fine. I definitely have some stuff that you guys won't have. I'm sure, Craig, you and mine will be the exact same number. I'm sure, Craig, you and I will have at least our top one is probably the exact same. But go ahead.
Sure. So last year I slammed my ears with podcasts because I think last year was the first year I really got into podcasts. This year has been completely the opposite. I've barely listened to any
podcasts. So you got into podcasts and were a part of a podcast simultaneously. You're like, what's a podcast? I'll do it.
Well, I think it was like late in the year before. I had to admit, obviously, it was the year before, but I really got into multiple podcasts last year.
Yeah.
This year, I haven't listened to too many at all. I think I lost my headphones at one point, so I just kind of got out of it because I used to listen to
No,
them
no,
at
no.
work.
You lost your charger for your Bluetooth headphones, and
That was it.
I know because
That
we
was
talked about
You're
it
right.
way too many times. I was like, just go buy a $10 pair of
I
headphones at
did,
Walmart.
and I did, but I never got back really into
It just wasn't the same.
getting back into
It
podcasts.
just didn't sound the
Um,
same. People talking.
Exactly.
You got to have high
I
quality.
changed. I've grown up. Let's see. My number 3, and this is the 3 podcasts I've listened to this year, so this is why this is number 3. My number 3 is the Anti-News Live.
Good
Because,
God.
right?
Hang your head in shame.
I am. But the only reason I listen to it
obviously,
is 'cause I go-
Anti-News is my second favorite, and The System is Down is my number 1 favorite, but I'm not an asshole enough to put them on my list.
I'm going to plug it. It's on my list because it's the only things I listen to. The only
Fine.
reason I listen to it is once in a while I'll go back and listen to make sure we don't sound like complete and utter horseshit. And I do end up laughing at it because I'm hilarious. I'm the funniest person I know. But that's enough of
most
that.
humble, too.
If you don't know what the Anti-News Live is, this wasn't me shamelessly plugging it. It's because I haven't listened to hardly anything. Number 2 on my list, rolling right along, is still Those Conspiracy Guys, because it is still an awesome podcast, and
Can
they
you
still
give your
release
review in their accent, please?
No, I can't do an Irish accent. I will not do them justice. If you like anything close to conspiracy theories, and they're not like crazy conspiracy theorists where they're like, oh, obviously the government's poisoning us and all this crazy shit like Dan does. But
Shut up.
these guys just dig into different, and sometimes it's not even conspiracies. Like sometimes it's just like the such and such axe murder stories, and just like theories or like rumors or mythological stories and stuff. So, and they'll go do like a 5-hour episode.
Yeah,
and I
it's
love it
very long
because
form.
it is a long format, but I love it because they get into the history of it and how it how the story developed, and then they'll get into the conspiracy side of it, and then at the end they do what they call getting off the fence. They'll decide whether between the 3 or 4 people on the panel at the time, they'll decide if they believe it or not, or if they buy into it or not. And it's still on my list primarily because they released a Bohemian Grove episode lately, so it's like, oh, they're still on top of the world, and their Irish accents just make everything that much better to listen to. And they even
Makes
get a
it funny
Scottish
even
guy
when
on
they're not
every
making
once in a while.
jokes.
Oh, they're always making a joke, and they're always calling people cunts, and it's really fun.
You can't do that here. Take that shit over
no.
to Ireland.
Okay. They get a Scottish guy on every once in a while, which makes it even more humorous because he's so freaking hard to understand because he has such a heavy, thick accent. Then number 1 is primarily the only thing I've listened to this
Same.
year.
PC-Pod?
What'd you say?
No,
PC-Pod?
no, that was last year.
Oh.
This year, and I stumbled across it accidentally. It's the Quite Frankly podcast, and we talk about it a lot. If you actually listen to the Anti-News, we reference him a lot because he's
And he's
similar
been on the
to
show.
Yes. It's similar to the format we do for the Anti-News, except it's not always as like lighthearted and humorous. He digs into like the deep shit that's going on in the news, and he gets all pissed off and frustrated. He's like a Italian New Yorker who brings up the topics going on in the world at the time. He gets way more political than we do, talks about politics and stuff like that. And his format is just fantastic. He just carries the show for a couple hours a night, and
Every single freaking night. Monday through
every
Friday.
single night.
It's
And I
ridiculous.
stumbled across it because I used to watch a YouTube channel called Destroying the Illusion. It's a super conspiratorial guy, and I don't buy into probably 80% of what he says, but he still has some interesting things to talk about, and the topics, you can look him up. Well, one day I went to get my daily dose of his YouTube channel, and it was nowhere to be found because they kicked him off for whatever reason. And so I typed in Destroying the Illusion. The first thing that popped up was an interview with that guy on the Quite Frankly podcast. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to this interview. I listened to the interview. I'm like, oh, shit, this show is really good. And so from that point on, that was my new go-to show, was the Quite Frankly podcast. I haven't listened to it in probably a couple weeks now, but it still is my source of news. If I want to know what's actually going on, I'll go to his show because the way he goes about it and the way he talks about it is pretty much
He's
right
great
on
and
with
chill and laid back and super informative. And you actually turned me on to his stuff based on what was that case that we were following? The
the one in Arizona
backyard
with
brawl
like the,
case.
Yep.
And I listened to that, and I have not stopped listening ever since. And I've listened to almost every episode. I still listen almost every day. Sometimes I tune in live. Sometimes I call in because it's a call-in show too. Like, it's a super awesome format that he does, and he does a fantastic job. And he's been on the show, and he's going to come back on again. He's all about it, and great guy. Great show.
That's the
Good
show
everything.
that made us really decide to push to go with our live show too. It's just like, dude, we got to do this. We got to go live, and it did not go nearly as successful as that
It
guy.
went fine for about 12 weeks until the internet stopped working. But, Craig, any honorable mentions? I assume not, since the anti-news was your number 3. You're not even going to honorable mention. I was going to say. You better. What about BC Pod or anything like that?
I haven't actually. I don't think I've probably listened to 1 or 2 episodes this year. I kind of got tired of it just because I listened to so much last year that I moved to different things, and then I moved to not really listening to much at all. My New Year's resolution is to listen to more podcasts and get some new content this next year because
Wow, really
I felt
setting a
bad
high
when
bar
I
for yourself to hit, right?
Well, I
My
went-
New Year's
yeah,
resolution is to listen to more
listen
things.
to things. Well, I felt bad when I went to. I'm like, oh, I've got to get into my podcast list. I'm like, I haven't listened to any podcasts. How is this possible? Because I'm like a huge fan of podcasts. It's like I'd rather listen to a podcast than watch TV most of the time. But I've been watching more Netflix, and I need to stop because Netflix is garbage. So
The devil. All right, let's move on to Cole. Cole,
Okay,
are you awake still over there?
good.
What is your number 3 podcast of 2018?
So I haven't really gotten into discovering a lot of new podcasts or anything. If somebody
That's
is,
all right, because you weren't here last year, so nobody knows what you listen to.
Okay. Well, I could say anything then.
That's right.
Um,
Porn.
well, I had like when I first got into
Perfect.
podcasting, it was like 1. Then I got a second, and then I had 3 or 4 for a while, and then
Yeah.
just this year, I think I found like 3 or 4 additional shows. So I'd say my number 3 would be There's a show called The Dollop with Dave Anthony and Gareth Reynolds, I think.
The Dollop?
Yeah, The Dollop. It's 2 comedians, and one of them prepares it's an actual history like lesson generally. Like, it's not like he's not a teacher, but it's kind of like that. Like, here's a person from history. This is a thing that happened. Here's all the details. And then the other guy, they just riff on it. Like, they just it's just funny. The Gareth Reynolds guy, he's hilarious. So I just heard about them through another podcast because he was a guest. Gareth Reynolds was a guest on Dumb People Town, which I believe happened to me this year.
I think that was last year, but it's still airing, I believe.
Oh yeah,
So it still
airing,
counts.
for sure. Dumb
Because you
People
turned me
Town-
onto that show, and I've listened to it
Dumb
a
People
bit.
Town is the Sklar brothers. That's Jason and Randy Sklar with they're comedians. They're not huge comedians, but they're
They're
B-list.
funny as shit.
B-list comedians. They know all kinds of A-list comedians, and they have them on their show. So on Dumb People Town, they just take 3 news stories where the guy's name is Dan. I don't even remember. He takes the stories, screens them to see if they're good to riff on. People send them to him.
Yeah.
And he reads them to the other 2 guys, the other 2 comedians, and their guest. And they just riff on these news stories. They're usually stupid people from Florida who did something stupid.
Right.
And these comedians just tear it apart, and it's hilarious. And it's like
It's
the
a great
shit we
show.
would do if it's like, did you hear about the dude who
Right.
whatever?
It's basically what Craig and I do on Anti-News,
Right.
but we're not as funny.
That's what I was gonna say.
So
but I didn't
Cole,
wanna
you should join us on
shamelessly plug our show.
Anti-News.
Yeah.
Cole, you should join us as a
That's
third
an
party on
invite, then
Anti-News.
I'll try. Yeah. I'd do it. So that show has been really cool. And then this year for sure, I really got into the Halloween spirit for some dumb reason. Like, I feel like a lot of my friends always got into Halloween, and I wanted to. And it's like another. It rivals Christmas for like party excuse. You know what I mean?
Sure.
In a lot of people's eyes. Anyway,
You don't get to
so-
dress
that's
up
the
as
only
a
reason.
slutty nurse at Christmas.
What?
You don't get to dress up as a slutty
You-
nurse at Christmas.
You can,
I do.
You can.
but yeah. So it's not as normal, but.
People frown on that.
Right, but I really got into the Halloween spirit, so I was looking for like ghost story type shows to listen to. Honestly, because on your show you had, I think, Remzo, who did that haunted investigation of older churchyard.
Yeah,
where there was,
he's got his own TV show now.
There was a lot of activity, and I'm like, holy crap, I love this kind of stuff. I love this story. I think that's awesome. Like, people actually not just telling bullshittery and like, oh, this happened. Like, they're just like they're trying to interact, trying to find out the history.
That episode came out last Halloween. That's probably the last time you listened to the show, right?
No, I cherry picked stuff, but
yeah, I know. I'm kidding.
That was intriguing to me, and it honestly spurred me on to looking for. There's got to be entire shows that are dedicated to having, like a Ghost Hunters thing, but the Ghost Hunters was obviously super produced in like the Taps or the Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters.
You always got to have a sensationalism on those.
That crap ended up that stuff ended up sucking because of how, they had to have a good show, and it was just probably all made up. But those like Remzo's, I was like, I want to hear that more. And so I thought, does he just do that? And I couldn't really find much content from him on it.
I'll give you some links.
So yeah, you should.
I'll post him in the show notes and the show description as well.
You should.
Keep up on Remzo.
Yeah. So I searched for some, and I found one called Haunted Places, which it's like a dramatized theatrical sort of version of actual real haunted places. It's
like reenactments.
Yeah, but it's kind of cheesy, so I didn't really love that one. I'd call that an honorable mention. I'm sorry. Sure. But yeah, there's one called Jim Harold's True Ghost Stories, and it's just people call in and tell stories of their life, and a lot of it's bullshit. A lot of it, I think, is just people calling in and being like, "Oh, this crazy thing happened to me," and like some of them you can tell want attention.
My cat pushed a cup off the counter in the middle of the night.
There are the times
and my
when
grandma died last month. When
the person calling actually is good at telling their story, and then it's just kind of chilling sometimes when somebody's like, "This is what it was," and it's like, whoa. Some stuff does get kind of like, wow, that I don't know what to make of that. Even, most stuff you can just say that's dumb. Yeah. But it was very festive and interesting, and I was just about to listen to some more today, but I got sidetracked because I was like, you know what? What would be fun? Ghost stories. Ghost stories are always cool. Like when you get together with buddies or something, when we used to back in high school, whatever, and you'd be at a sleepover and you'd be like, all right, let's talk about the ghost story shit. What do you got?
So is that your number one, or?
Yeah, I'm going to call that my number one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you still keeping up with the Bad Christian podcast?
Yeah, I listen to it. Yeah.
Cool. So would that be an honorable mention?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so
we got to give them shout outs because
I'll give you my
because Toby's been on the show and Joey's coming on in a couple of weeks.
I'll give you my honorable mentions,
which will be out before this comes out.
Honorable mentions that would include that Haunted Places, which was like the True Ghost Stories, but just the dramatized shit I wasn't that into. Yeah. We'll say Spontaneation, which is a show. It's a comedian. It's Paul F. Tompkins. Yeah. And it's literally mostly improv. It's a whole show where
he's good. He's been on HarmonQuest too, right, Nathan?
I'm sure he has.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, he has. Yep. It was first season.
So, comedy podcasts and some like haunting type podcasts. And of course, I always listen to the Bad Christian podcast and sometimes Song Rescue, the one where they take band submissions and kind of talk about their songs a little bit.
Break them down, produce them, basically.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really fun show.
It is.
I
liked it better when it was Unstoppable Badass.
Yeah.
Because it was like Toby just sketching on dumb shit. Like, there was one where he had, what did he have? Did you listen to those?
Yeah, I did.
He made a whole sketch about
is there like a Christian
men's youth or not men's youth group, a men's like
men's church
small group.
Yeah, like
and
a
what
men's,
they would talk about.
It was accountability group or something.
It was hilarious.
That show was hard for me to listen to because I like the Bad Christian podcast. I like Toby's humor, but I do like that people like Matt bring him back to center at some point. And some of those episodes, he just never came back to center. It's just like, where the fuck are you going with this?
No, dude, it was clever, and it was the whole thing, and you just couldn't understand it. A lot of it was so weird, the satire of it.
It's true.
This is not my list, but Cole, you were talking about looking for a certain type of podcast, and I've got a list if you're ready. Otherwise,
let me
send me something later.
He's got a list to give you before his list that's just related to your list.
A list.
What do you got?
Okay,
And he's
so
the one that wanted to go home early.
He's
whatever.
at home.
Okay.
This is his
This is
subcategory of Cole's list.
This is my part. I've been listening to podcasts for over a decade, and it's all I do. Like, this is my main form of media. So
It's kind of my
He's
thing.
been listening to them before they were cool.
Exactly.
I was listening to them back when you had to go to weird places on the internet to
I
find
don't
them.
think I
and you
want
actually downloaded them.
your suggestions anymore.
He listens to podcasts on cassette tape and vinyl.
Yeah, yeah. Back when you had to actually download it to your hard drive to listen to it, and then move it over to your iPod.
I did that.
So first is Homecoming. I'm not going to describe each of these. I'm just going to write them down and let you go into
All
it.
right.
Then Tanis, Tanis.
That's weird.
You should check out Spooked.
I think I've seen that one. There's a lot that I was trying to field and see if they were any good.
Yeah, exactly. The No Sleep podcast.
It's 24/7.
Yeah, Myths and Legends.
I think I've heard of that one too. That was good.
Yeah, those are some to get you started anyway.
Also,
Yeah.
since you brought up
Get
You
Remzo,
started. That's going to take them up the rest of the
Right.
year or next year.
Also, since you brought up Remzo has not pitched, but like suggested a podcast to me called Cult. Gets into a lot of the different cults throughout history and stuff, and I have yet to listen to it still. But he described it. Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
So Nathan, do you want to get into your actual list, or do you have any more subcategories? You have Craig's subcategory
Well,
B too.
Yeah, Craig, what are you into? What are you looking at?
He already gave his list.
Well, I know, but he had like your podcast on there.
Yeah, that means he doesn't care about much. He has our podcast. He has the Anti-News, which was based off of, quite frankly, so his number 1 and number 3 are pretty similar, and his second one, I don't even remember what it was.
Those conspiracy guys.
Oh, same thing.
So not really, but I like
Yeah, no.
conspiracy stuff, but not necessarily. I don't like the super cheesy ones. Like you'll find some random, like 3-episode thing that never made it off the freaking
Yeah.
Yep.
off out of the basement. But I don't know. I'll get back to you on that with
Have you
my
heard-
list of things I like.
Have you heard of it's a small podcast? Not a lot of people have listened to it. The Joe Rogan Experience.
Haha.
Oh my god,
I've heard of that.
his
Yeah,
interview with
that
Elon
one's-
Musk was awesome.
Dude, I don't listen to
But
that
Elon
because I
Musk
don't trust
smokes
Elon Musk. He
weed.
smokes weed.
And
Kidding. That's all
Joe
anybody had to
Rogan's
say
chill.
about. I mean, they talked for like 3 freaking hours. I'm sure it was super intellectual and brilliant, but all anybody cares about is that Elon Musk smoked weed.
No, he held a joint, put
He-
it to his lips, and then handed it
Exactly.
back.
Yes.
He barely did anything.
he has
I'm-
no right to run. I don't trust him to run a mega billion-dollar corporation.
That's
anymore.
fine because it's a privately owned enterprise. So
Right. Well, we're
Right.
not saying this seriously. That was actually a news story
I know,
that people
that's
were freaking
insane.
out about it.
I
It's
know
like
you guys are being
completely
satirical. I'm
retarded,
just-
but
it's crazy that anyone would think that they should call for someone's resignation of their own company like it's a private
Yep.
company.
right.
all right, Nathan.
Yeah.
What's your
so
number
in
3?
My actual list. I did. So I've got 5. I did focus
more.
on
Son of a bitch.
largely.
I gotta
did
go to bed,
focus
Nathan.
largely on- Shut the fuck up.
Nathan.
I did focus largely on ones that had either come out this year or pretty close to this year, just because that's the way I thought about it. Although there's a lot of them, but I would say I'll do runner-up, Unobscured, which is a fairly new podcast. Basically, right now they're going through the Salem witch trials and just trying to paint some perspective on that, just trying to unobscure history, so to speak. So just kind of like set the stage and like say like, how could this kind of shit actually happen, and
Right.
try to provide some context into what actually went into it.
There you go, Nathan. That's what I like. Like
Yeah.
the backstory to like historical things like that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been
I'm
That's
writing
why I
that
like
down,
those
for sure.
conspiracy guys.
yeah. So
I'm not
check
writing
that
it
one out.
down, but I am recording it. So
That was called
Yeah.
what now?
Unobscured.
you guys
Unobscured.
just go back and listen to the episode.
No.
I don't
continue,
listen to your episodes.
Okay, go back and listen to the episode, because then it'll boost his plays and downloads, and it'll bring him up in the ranking.
I'll get
On Apple.
2 more,
Yeah.
and then I'll have
Another
double
one
the downloads that I have now.
I was gonna say you'll be
Yeah.
up from what 2?
Another one I've been liking. This is just again one of my idiosyncratic interests, but the soundtrack show. basically just going over movie soundtracks and just, breaking them down, bringing in some context, talking about like, what went into making it. It's crazy that a lot of times these classic movies like Jaws and Star Wars and like all these great movies, sometimes the score, like at best they had like 3 weeks to turn it around, like after they had like a rough cut of the movie. So it's just really cool to hear some of those stories about like what actually went into these really cool movies that are so iconic to our pop culture.
Write a masterpiece in 24 hours ago.
Why imagine, obviously Star Wars, amazing scoring. It's a character of the movie, just like
it is
any other. It's
The Lion King.
Yeah, The Lion King.
Yeah,
all that stuff.
So,
I mean,
I love this show. It's in its first go. I think maybe it's had like 20 to 30 episodes, but it's cranking them out, quality episodes, covering solid movies like Jaws, Back to the Future, the Star Wars.
they're on that list. Star Wars is for having a quick turnaround time.
It's gone. Star Wars, I think he had a little bit more time on that, but I know Jaws was like almost nothing. But that was one of the first ones. That makes sense. There's different movies,
ones that are known for their soundtracks, though.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, some of them for sure. It's like it was just kind of a work of passion because they knew they had to get it done. But yeah, some really cool stories there.
I mean, you look at something like Jaws, where if somebody said, you look at the Jaws soundtrack, you're like, oh, what does that even mean? Who cares? Why would I listen to that? But it's like, if you go, da da, that's all you have to say, and people know what you're talking about. It's so iconic.
If you see or imagine a shark swimming at you, you instantly hear that score in your head.
Whether you've watched the movie or not.
Exactly. Can you imagine the people that write these? They're probably watching the movie and just coming up with stuff, like what they're feeling in their head. This guy was watching a shark swim at a girl.
Shark come at them. They just made it up.
Right. Yeah. He sees a shark swimming at the girl, and the first thing that came into his head was, or maybe not the first, but what came out of that was, da dun.
Yeah.
And
I needed it to sound like a creepy, suspenseful build-up is probably all he could think, and that's what he came up with.
Anyway,
when John Williams presented to Spielberg, he thought he was joking with him because he has that kind of a sense of humor, but he was like, no, seriously, like this is what's going to happen, and he bought him over with it. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, then I've been really enjoying this show. It technically came out towards the end of last year, but he's been picking up a little bit more frequency lately. But it's a show called The Darknet Diaries, and he just it's a really cool, it's kind of like investigative journalism in a sense, but he presents it really well. But it just kind of delves into these dark, the side of the internet that you never hear about, like, hey, Google had like a Trojan in it, like, did you realize that? And like going back to the first like bank robbery that occurred on the internet, and like, all these different like hacking type, a lot of it based around hacking, like stories that are super cool. It's like a crime drama for tech stuff, like, but all of it's real stuff, I've really been enjoying that.
It's like the Geek Squad nightmare.
Yeah.
So is that your number 2 or number 4? Where are we starting here?
That's technically a number 3, I guess. I don't know. They're not really numbered exactly. I mean,
you too cool for numbers?
I don't know. I just try to rank them. They're different categories.
That's fine.
Although, okay, then a new story arc came from one that's a classic for me. It's been around 3 or 4 years now, I think. But they started a new story arc and a new RPG.
Freaking Dungeons and Dragons bullshit.
Yeah, it's the Adventure Zone. They started something different, and I just love it. It's super great. I'm telling you guys, if you don't listen to the Adventure Zone or My Brother and Me, you are missing out.
I've listened to My Brother and Me a little bit.
Yeah, you need to listen to that. This year I've gotten back into it a lot heavier. It was around maybe 2014 when I started listening to them, and I was listening like all the time. And then, I don't know, about a year ago, I just fell away and went to other things. But then I got back into them this year, and it's so great. It's consistently great.
So is it similar to Harmon Quest, where they're making funny campaigns in these games, or is it just like nerdcore, like just playing games and documenting it.
That's great about it is they're not like the nerd core type people. They were like they needed that one of their brothers was going on paternity leave, and so they needed filler, and so they're like, let's try this Dungeons and Dragons thing, and so it's the three brothers and their dad, and it's amazing how much drama they bring into it. Like it's a legitimate storytelling experience. But then my brother and me is amazing just for comedy, for passing an hour or so. It's just, and there's so much gold that comes out of those episodes, and I don't know, just great stuff. But then at the top of my list, I would say is a little radio drama type one that's 100% comedy, but it's kind of like a science fiction thing called Bubble. You guys need to check this out. You owe it to yourself to listen to it. It's, I think, probably
you can't
about
afford not to listen to Bubble.
Yeah, you can't. It's like 8 or 9 episodes. And each of them are like a half hour. It's super easy to digest, and it's really quality stuff. It's people like Paul F. Tompkins, voice actors and comedians that written by a great team of comedy writers. It's really great stuff. Basically, the premise is that it's kind of this world where people live inside these domes or bubbles, and it's kind of all owned by corporations. If you kind of like to poke fun at hipster culture, you're gonna love it, because it's
the
like
person that's been consistently the absolute most hipster of the
I know
entire
who
night.
I am. I know who I
gotta
am.
get going,
You're not gonna
guys,
make
so-
me feel bad about myself.
Yeah,
But
I'm gonna get out of here. Sorry.
All right, Cole. Well,
It's my number one call.
you'll
I'm
have to
wrapping
go
up.
back and listen to find out my riveting answers, or my riveting top 3 to podcasts.
I'm sorry. I gotta go.
That's all right. Thanks for being here.
Peace.
We'll see you.
On your way home, listen to a podcast.
Later, Cole.
Bye.
Bye, Cole. Everybody say bye, Cole.
Bye,
Cole.
Cole.
Go, Dan.
All
Did you
right.
already go?
I have not gone. No.
Okay.
Because I go last, and by that point, everybody's talked about everything that I care about, and then it doesn't matter at all. But I actually do have some that were not brought up here. So I'll start with my number.
Let me guess. You have things that none of us probably have ever listened to.
I mean, I was listening to these things long before any of you were listening to them, so it doesn't matter. Yes. I have things that are way more pop culture, actually, than what you guys have listed, so it's not hipster things at all by any stretch. But my number 3 is by the YouTube channel Collider Video. They do Jedi Council. They do like multiple shows every week, but one of them is Jedi Council, where they give all the Star Wars news and dig into all the...
Sounds super nerdy.
They dig into all like the new novels and like tying things together and just breaking down the latest in Star Wars. And I find it a very good listen every single time. Not much else to say. If you're a Star Wars nerd, you'll enjoy it because it keeps you up to date on things and keeps you informed on, like, I don't get into much of the novels or like even like the animated series or anything, but they dig into all of them and they say what to look for and what to they talk about like leaks and stuff and stories and stuff like that, but totally nerd boring stuff for most people, but I really enjoy it. Nathan, I think you probably would too.
Is this like Star Wars, like what's going on in like the production of like new Star Wars content, or is this actually like what's going on in Star Wars land?
Mostly what's going on in new Star Wars content and like making predictions, talking about stuff that's coming out and stuff like that. So
The best Star Wars news of 2018 is when Disney came out and was like, hey, we're going to pull back on releasing all these Star Wars films because we're becoming oversaturated.
I disagree. But whatever. That's another day's conversation.
I mean, don't get me
Craig
wrong,
still
I like
hasn't
Star
watched
Wars.
Solo, so I don't really care about his opinion. And he's barely watched the bastard child that is Rogue One. But my second, my number 2 would be also another YouTube channel that releases as a podcast. And some people who listen to my show might scoff at this, but it's Louder with Crowder. He's a very conservative political guy, but he is very comedic. He's number 1 a comedian and an entertainer, but he covers politics in ways that I agree with in a lot of ways, and some ways that I do not. But he's got kind of he's like super right, or not super right. He's right with like libertarian values in a lot of ways, so I really enjoy his commentary. But I mostly listen to him because he makes amazing points, and he's a great speaker, an orator, and comedian first and foremost. So I would highly recommend listening to Louder with Crowder, which to probably, I mean, have either of you heard of him? I know, Craig, you have a little bit.
Of him from you, yeah, but I have not listened to him.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like going to be newsworthy for most of the people that listen to our show, but to you guys it might be. Like, I know a lot of the people that listen are from the libertarian sphere, from the Lions of Liberty and all that stuff, but yeah, I really enjoy him. I disagree with him sometimes, but I think he's a great entertainer for sure. And my number one is, quite frankly, as Craig already pointed out, he is brilliant and he does similar stuff, but he gives more of a view that I agree with, mostly politically, and he leans a little conspiratorial in some areas, but he doesn't bog things down with conspiracy, and he keeps things very fun and dark comedic, which I like, and does not mince words, does not hold back on his brash comedy, or brash commentary / comedy. My honorable mentions would be the Lions of Liberty, as always. They have 3 shows every single week, and every single one of the guys that host those shows have been on this show in the past. So I got to give shout-outs at the very least. I weekly tune into the Wednesday show that is Brian McWilliams breaking down the current events, and he's a comedian. So that's kind of been the thread tonight. We all enjoy different things, but comedy is in the center of everything.
Right, bringing that comical atmosphere to the shit that's going on in the world. That
Exactly.
just kind of seems to be our theme.
Yeah, and Mark interviews a lot of libertarian brilliant minds on Mondays, which I tune into often, and John Odermatt interviews, well, he has Felony Friday on Fridays, ironically enough, where he interviews a lot of felons and people who work with felons who they're just exposing the injustices in the criminal justice system. So they have a lot of really interesting stuff over there. Got to give a shout out, of course, to the Bad Christian Podcast. Like I said, Toby Morell has been on the show, and Joey is coming on the show. It will be a couple weeks ago when you finally listen to this, but great guys, always good entertainment, even though I disagree with them on a lot of things politically and even some things religiously. I enjoy what they do and their ability to challenge people's stagnant Christian beliefs. Church and Other Drugs, I would recommend. It's a show with 2 former drug addicts talking about addictions, and they talk about other real-life things too. It's an unfiltered Christian-based podcast, and I was on their show recently, so I definitely gotta plug them a little bit. Also, the 29 Toys Podcast, who is the supporter of the show, and my weekly what's the word? Sponsor. And I've been on their show. They have a great show if you're into zero structure, zero like. I mean, they'll come in with like something that they want to talk about, and then they'll talk about that for about 5 minutes, and then it's just dudes drinking and talking about dude stuff, as I say every week on the show. It's a good time, and it's friends of mine, so I would encourage everybody to go check it out because it's a lot of fun. But those are my honorable mentions.
Was that your list of? I was gonna say, was that your list of your favorite shows, or was that your list of people you owe and you have to mention?
Yeah, I talk about them every single week. I don't owe them shit.
These guys.
I don't know them shit. But yeah, I would encourage people to go check them out because they're good. It
reminds me. I know you actually listen to these, but it was kind of reminding me of like the radio talk hosts that are like, oh, check these people out. These are the company I would go to. It's just like, that's a local company. So I doubt, like, there's, have you heard of the Bob and Tom Show? I'm guessing you probably have.
Shut up.
Well, I don't know what you listen to.
Never heard of the Bob and Tom Show.
Anyway, every morning they do an ad for a local real estate company, and Bob's like, or not Bob, I think it's Tom because Bob retired. Tom's like, if I was in the market
is
to
it
sell
the
my
Tom
house,
Show
I would
now?
well, it's still called the Bob and Tom Show, but Bob retired
they have a
couple
new
years
Bob?
ago. No,
Oh,
Bob's just
dumb.
not there. He's there in spirit. He probably still owns rights to the show, is why. And they're not going to change the name because it's been successful for like 25 years. But anyway, he's like this local Cedar Rapids real estate company, and Tom's like, if I was on the market
You
to
talking
sell
about
my
Bob
house,
and Tom,
I know.
or are you talking about Dwyer and Michaels?
Good Lord, I don't even
Can
know
we-
who the fuck that is.
Okay.
Can
never
I
mind.
finish my sentence?
Can I finish, please?
Anyway, Tom says, if I was in the market to sell my house, I would call so and so for sure. It's like no, you wouldn't because you're in whatever state, and this is Cedar Rapids. Don't peddle this bullshit just because they're one of your sponsors. I mean, you can sponsor somebody without blatantly lying, and it's just like, come on, that's not even like a real thing.
Yep.
But anyway, that had nothing to do with the show, but that's what you
That's
reminded me of
that's
there.
a great way to wrap it
If I
up.
was to listen to a show, I would listen to the 29 Toes podcast that I've never listened to
I never
before
said
in
if
my
I
life.
was going to listen to a show, I would listen
No,
to
I
the
know.
29 Toast podcast.
It's just
They
what
were
made
not in
me
my
think
top
of.
3, and they were my last honorable mention. So
You wouldn't listen.
maybe they might be just a plug out of obligation.
They just might be.
No, I'm kidding. But Nathan, Craig, the two remaining people who have survived our test of endurance, as Forrest would put it, do you have any final thoughts on the year 2018 or anything that we've talked about this evening?
Fuck 2018.
Well put.
That's about it.
Nathan, anything to add?
Hopefully 2019's better.
Nathan got up and started walking around a minute ago. I think he's like going in to brush his teeth, and he's on his way to bed because he's so done with this. And I
The
would
lights
understand.
already turned off. He was probably already brushing his teeth.
Yep.
He was making me dizzy too when he was like walking in circles.
He's just waiting for his wife to yell in the background, correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, well, Nathan, you are free to leave whenever you like. Thank you very much for being here. And Craig, always a pleasure to both of you. And we will see you both on the other side in 2019 when things are obviously going to be more beautiful and cheery because we all get along because of this show, and we have changed the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time, and now we can converse politely with each other in 2019. Make it so.
All right.
All right. Good finale. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.